In this rapidly evolving digital landscape, cyber risks have become a moving target that threatens organization at every turn. As attacks grow more sophisticated and unpredictable, how can businesses transform vulnerability into strategic strength? Welcome to the Policy Bazaar for Business show partnered by ET Now. I'm Kavita Thapliyal, and today we are exploring the critical art of cyber risk management, uncovering insights that can turn potential threats into organizational resilience. Joining me in this conversation, I have Najm Bilgrami, a Senior Vice President and National Head Financial Lines Tata AIG, Tarun Mathur, Co-founder and Chief Business Officer, Policy Bazaar for Business. All right, welcome to the show, Najm and Tarun. Tarun, first question to you, because it's very important for us to help businesses and organizations understand the kind of cyber security for them we are talking about. So a very basic question for all those people or all organization businesses who do not have an in-house cyber infra set up. What actually goes into having cyber risk for your organization or your businesses? How do you really quantify? How do you understand that there is a risk such as a cyber security risk attached to your business?
So Kavita, what I have seen is that organizations don't know; they're just not prepared. In a sense, it's like having a baby for the first time, right? As a family, I remember when we were having our first child. My mother handed me a book which is called "How to Expect What You're Expecting," right, or something like that. And it's all about, what can go wrong, what is normal, what is a threat, what is not a threat, when do you really need support. And because, if you look at it, and I'm sorry to create this anomaly, but your baby is the entire set of data or entire set of IP that you have. The mother is actually the network that you have to kind of protect and look after, right? Moods perspective. And then there is a husband who absolutely has no role except to read that book and kind of see what is going to happen. And I think organizations are kind of following that path of saying, okay, this could go wrong. This is what I have to take care of. This is where it could potentially be a threat. What to eat, what not to eat. And you look at data and you look at the information that's kept in clouds today. It's exactly like that.
Okay.
There are so many susceptibility studies out there, right? We understand what is the vulnerability of a particular system. And the organizations need to take that far more seriously. If you look at the American markets, or you look at worldwide, the kind of risks that have come about, we've seen so many ransomware attacks, cyber threats. So many times, people holding companies and nations hostage because of what they have in terms of information. I think that has to come about. A lot more education has to be into the system.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, approximately in 2015, it was about 300 million was the total amount paid for ransomware, right? That went to about 42 billion in the last year, and it's scheduled to go up to about $1,300 odd billion by the time it's 2031. That means that every 2 seconds there's going to be an attack. How do organizations prepare for it today and take it very seriously is going to be the question. I think that is what every CTO and every CIO in across the globe has to think about.
Mm-hmm. So how can they identify their risk sector-wise and organization setup-wise?
So, see, I will tell you, we were the first one to introduce this product in the Indian market in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, we also thought that this product is more to do with financial institution or the data-heavy company like your IT or outsourcing.
Mm-hmm.
But what we have experienced practically that this risk is for everyone. And I can give you a classic example in 2017. One claim which we have experienced coming from a real estate company. And when you look at cyber,
Real estate.
yes, and which was very surprising. Like when I was underwriting that policy, I also thought that they practically have almost zero exposure coming from cyber. But and like when you look at cyber, basically cyber has two major components. One, of course, the data, how data heavy the organization is.
Okay.
And if suppose there is a cyber incident and your systems are compromised, what kind of business interruption exposure which you expect? Now, when you look at a real estate company, they're not data heavy. And even if suppose there is a cyber incident, their systems are not working, still they will be able to operate, they will be able to do their business. So from that point of view, I thought that it's a good risk to write and probably like very minimal exposure. And then we saw this WannaCry incident wherein like 96 computers of that company practically got completely encrypted. A huge ransom has been demanded. So that time I realized that it's just not for IT or for financial institution. It is much beyond that. And practically I see every company who's using technology, OT systems, they all are exposed to this risk.
But then talking about the impact of this risk, could you also just elaborate on that and, the seriousness of the situation? What could that be?
See, this awareness is actually quite spread out. It depends on how your systems are doing. And, I always say that you have to have some sort of diagnostics available for your systems to be, to actually understand and be able to elaborate on where your risk lies. And like, you mentioned that there is, let's say, a 50 crore case that happened of ransomware that was paid very recently, right? We've also seen US companies pay as high as 40 million, etc. So it could vary. And I think what's most important there is, how do you actually check your systems, right? Can you run a vulnerability report? And these reports are very, very comprehensive. Like if you were to check your own health every year, why wouldn't you do that for your network? These reports actually give you a good measure of where you stand from a rating from A to F or 1 to 10, whichever report you choose. And they'll check very specific things, like what are your remote access ports, right? What are the number of fraudulent domains you have? What is your credential stuffing, right? What is the botnet activity running? What is your information exposure? See, because any company at any point in time has a lot of risks, right? There's an organizational risk, there's an operational risk, there's an industry risk, there's a regional risk. Now, you have to kind of take these risks, and any one of them could be $1 million or $1 billion risk. And that will only come about once you look at what is the kind of tactics that are deployed by these actors, what are the kind of threats that are present, and in terms of how prepared are you for any of these, will actually quantify what the outcome could be in the case of an eventuality.
It's time for a short break, but our special feature of the Policy Bazaar for Business show partnered by ET Now continues on the other side. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching the Policy Bazaar for Business show partnered by ET Now. But then how do you actually cope up with the kind of innovation, if I can call that, in cyber attacks that these people are doing? Every time there is something new that we are looking at, a new kind of an attack. So how do you cope up with that? How does the product cope up with that? I mean, both of you can answer this question. I'll start with you.
This is a new age risk. We will have to acknowledge, and it's very dynamic in nature.
Exactly.
So when you look at targeted industries, it is getting changed, like quarter to quarter, month to month, year to year. When you look at the techniques, the methods used, again, like there's so much of innovation happening on that side. Look at ransomware as a service group. The way they have moved, they have 24/7 call centers assisting those guys, the threat actors, in like helping them to identify the risk, how to target the companies, how to extract the data, how to ask for ransom. So all those are services which they're extending to those threat actors. Now moving to privacy laws, you see like every nation, like including us now, we have a DPDP Act, and the complications which the organization is facing in terms of complying with those privacy laws. Again, that's very dynamic. The kind of fines which we see, like I was reading about it, and there are like 5 billion fine has been charged by the GDPR regulator by now. Yeah, the largest fine, in fact, I can tell you, it's $1.2 billion fine which has been put on one of the organizations.
But this is just reported numbers. The unreported numbers?
These are reported numbers and publicly available, wherein like they're like reaching out to somewhere around like $5 billion fines under GDPR. So imagine like the organizations, and similarly like when you look at even the threat actors, it's just not those guys who wants to make quick money and they're using this as a tool. Even nations are using against enemy nation. Companies, the competitor are using against the other company. So this has become a tool wherein it's just not limited to those people who wants to make money out of it, but even like various organizations are involved using this tool. So this has become very complicated risk for in short. And the other thing which I would like to tell you, like the second part of your question, wherein you talk about the product moving from the initial stage where it was and today where it is. See, this product has been introduced in the US market, and considering it's a litigious market, the focus of the product was on the third-party legal liability, wherein like if suppose you as an organization holding a lot of third-party data, which, whether it's a corporate data or IPR, or let's say an individual data, wherein we say PII, personal identifiable information, look, your Aadhaar card, your PAN card, or your health details, if those details are with the organization, and suppose there is a cyber incident in which those third party details gets compromised, you're exposed to legal action. You can have damages to be paid to those third parties. So policy was focused on covering those exposures, but later the insured as well, the insurer realized that it's just not that. It is equally like the insured is also spending a lot of money to deal with this. And to tell you, like when you look at even the forensics cost which the organization incur, it's like huge amount which gets paid in forensics, the professional fee which you pay to the IT experts. Similarly, like you have data monitoring, you have crisis communication wherein the PR firms are managing, because it's a huge reputational risk for any organization.
Right.
So the kind of money which you pay in such situations, the notification risk, in fact, when you have to notify to the various regulatory body, to the affected parties, all these are costs. Similarly, like the other major two expenses is your extortion money which you pay. And if suppose there is an incident wherein like you are not able to operate and thus then suffers the net profit loss, the policy address all this.
Okay.
So now the product has moved from those third-party legal liability exposure to an overall product wherein the third-party legal liability as well as the first-party expenses which you incur, all of this gets addressed under the policy.
Tarun?
See, I think, times are changing. Thieves are far more innovative than the cops,
Exactly.
right?
What
And
is
look at
the
Ocean's
new
11,
kind
Pink
of a cyber
Panther.
attack then when it's not covered in the policy?
See, everything it all keeps changing.
Right.
And I think we have to keep abreast with technology. I think insurance companies, reinsurance companies are doing a very good job of kind of making sure that they have every little incident and then designing products around that. Because if you don't cover all the risks, then in the policy's utility is not there, then it'll stop getting sold. But I think it's also important for companies to understand how resilient their networks and their systems are. And to that effect, we've seen a lot of demand. I think the first step is awareness. They have to start watching your shows. They'll start talking about it, start reading the papers, and then get what is that's actually happening. Because you see, the fix for any problem is always one step behind actually the action happening. And it will only be, this will have to kind of live its course. And, in India, sadly speaking, not many organizations are understanding the problem,
especially small businesses. That is...
Small businesses are absolutely clueless about what could happen, right? And they feel we are so small, we probably won't get it. That's not realizing that the vulnerability for them is higher, because a thief understands that I keep saying this, that the house with the padlock is never attacked. It's the house that's open, as small as it might be. And smaller thefts get, sidelined. So SMEs have to kind of look at where the risk lies, and especially if they are setting up the business to become a large business someday, they have to understand that they have to watch out for it on day one.
Right.
There's so many small mutual fund companies, fund houses, small banks that are coming out. And while they're focusing on their business and their growth, they're not really focusing on what could happen if even one part of their data comes outside, right? And look at the kind of threats that are coming about. People come in, they will just own your server, you will have no access to it. What do you do? The part that I think that, I know that his company is solving today is incident management also. What do you do when an incident happens? So I think there's a lot more awareness that needs to come into the system where, we're talking about...
What do you actually do when it happens? I mean, if you can just explain that. What do you actually do? You obviously report it first.
So when you look at the policy, it is a legal liability policy, and it says that as soon as you identify a threat, you should be consulting your insurer. And now when you look at, as I said, insurers has also moved from where they were to today, wherein it's just not the indemnity which they offer under the policy, but even they help the insured to mitigate the situation. So they have those vendor tie-ups ready. The entire ecosystem is ready, wherein, and especially I can tell you, like when it comes to large IT companies or large banks, they do have their own setup, the forensics team to address those exposures.
But small businesses don't have all this.
I can tell you, like I have seen claims wherein clients calling us saying that we have a denial of access attack and we don't know whom to approach. And in such situations, these vendor tie-ups become very helpful, because understand, like those guys in your system, the threat actors are there in your systems. They're moving from one system to other system through your network, and you practically don't know how to stop them. So at that point of time, these vendor tie-ups becomes very important, wherein they come into the picture immediately. You have a SLA signed, you have the price, everything set up for them, and then they start working with the insured to help them to mitigate the situation as soon as possible.
Okay.
So whether it's a law firm, whether it's a forensics firm, whether you need a ransomware negotiator to sit and start negotiating on behalf of them. So all these,
Okay.
yeah,
Even that is done. Okay.
yeah,
Can you explain that by
yes, yeah.
example? How is that
and in
done?
fact, like when we are talking about the extortion situation, it's very complex, because when you look at a extortion situation, because of the sanction limitations, you can't just go and pay to any entity.
Okay.
The first, for an insurer as well as for the insured, has to identify that the ransom money which you're paying to those threat actors, whether they are sanctioned entity or individual or not. Once you substantiate that, only then you're allowed to make payment, because otherwise, like, you're breaching the sanction laws. So that's one. And they're also, like, insurers, along with the insured, they're helping the insured with the help of forensics firm, with the help of those law firms, to identify and to substantiate whether those threat actors are a sanctioned individual or entity. And second part of the extortion threat is paying the ransom. Now, the ransom is not demanded in cash or check. It is always those virtual currencies. So when you have to make those payments, and India, we don't recognize them as a legal tender. So
Right.
then, yeah, you need those agencies which practically helps you to make the payment on behalf of you. So there are companies who hold those wallets, and at the time of such crisis situations, insureds reach out to them. They definitely charge their professional fee, but they transfer the money on behalf of them. Policy do address the professional fee as well as the extortion money which you pay.
Okay.
So there are
That's taken care of
mechanism.
accordingly. But then, as an industry, if I want to put this question, are you also handholding, especially small businesses, to have an ecosystem, an in-house ecosystem? I mean, they definitely need to have an insurance policy in place, but what about the cyber ecosystem?
I think it's important that you associate with the right partner. Like you mentioned, right, we have to take care of the risk of the SMEs. We have to make sure that all the services that are already there inbuilt into large organizations, because they have a CTO, they have a CIO, are there for SMEs. So that's what we do. See, we're working on the entire ecosystem. I mentioned, first we go.
Step-wise, how would you like to help them? I mean, if at all someone is watching you now.
Step one, we will first come and we'll assess what your risk is, what your network is. We'll run a report. We will see what your vulnerability is, right? Basis that, we will get the right product, which is the right insurance product out for you, basis your risk and your vulnerabilities. Step three is, in the eventuality of a claim, how are we helping him in the incident management, right? Are we have to have IT consultants and lawyers who help them more. Not even people like me. We have a set of people who do this day in, day out, being able to understand what the problem is, see how long that threat has been in the system, how effective or how brutal is it, and then basis that, activate the policy and kind of get the claim part. Also, while all this is happening, you've got to keep it going regularly. You have to check the health of the system. See, in SMEs, because they're evolving faster, their risk keeps increasing, and you've got to keep abreast with it. So let's say a cover of $1 million in the first year might be enough, but maybe a cover of $10 million the next year is not enough, because, depending on the scale of the company and how much data do they kind of accumulate by that time. So I think step by step, or at least what Policybazaar is doing, is helping their small SMEs customers to look at also holistic way and almost outsource their entire risk onto Policybazaar, and then we're able to help them through each and every step. As they become larger, of course, they'll become more stable, more resilient. They will look after privacy of data, etc. But till then, they need this handholding, which we're able to provide. But the most important part is for the organization to recognize that this is important.
What sector companies are the most insured?
Yep. So when you look at today, I think every organization has started understanding the importance of cyber insurance. And we practically see almost all the industries coming and buying cyber insurance. But if I have to tell you, the financial institution, or let's say IT outsourcing, these are two industries, and there are reasons to it. One, when you look at financial institution, they are one of the most regulated industry. So there's a lot of regulatory push to look at those cyber solutions, and they're reaching out to us for cyber insurance. So that's one. When we look at the IT outsourcing company, most of the Indian companies, they practically have more than 50% revenue coming from US and Europe.
Exactly.
And those contracts which they sign with those third party, they are pushing them to have a cyber insurance policy, professional indemnity policy.
Okay.
So they are contractually pushed to buy the cyber insurance policy. So definitely, like these two industry, we see the most were coming and buying this policy. But now, as I see, as I told you, like we are seeing like almost every industry have identified this as an exposure. In fact, a very different thing which I would like to tell you, like during pandemic, we saw manufacturing getting compromised, and various manufacturing sectors, pharma sectors got
What type of
targeted.
attacks?
They have suffered cyber breaches wherein their systems were compromised, their OT systems the control has been taken away, and they were practically unable to function. And let me tell you, like when you look at this side of the industry, when you look at IT and outsourcing, they're well aware of
They're well aware.
cyber as an exposure. But when you look at manufacturing or the industrial setup, for them, safety is a major concern. When you go to a factory, they'll ask you to wear helmet. They'll not allow you to go beyond a point. Why? Because the concern is safety. So they always thought that safety is their concern, and that's why, and probably ignored security. And for hackers or the threat actors, they became the easy target because they never gave training to their employees with respect to cyber security or the phishing attack or the business email email compromise attack, that how to identify those attacks, or probably which sites to visit, which site you're not supposed to visit, which data or which documents you are not supposed to download. So all such trainings, when you look at manufacturing side, they don't do all such trainings.
Right, yeah.
And that's why like they became the easy target for these threat actors. So that's in general. But when you look at the large companies, even the IT setup which they have along with the OT setup, it is very complex. It's not as easy as, or as seamless is the right word, as seamless as what probably a financial institution or IT company is having. There it is a IT and OT setup wherein they have a lot of legacy system. So even to update and patch those systems, they take more time than IT. And those threat actors, that's the opportunity for them to enter in those. So all these things like making this risk very complicated.
Very complicated, exactly.
Yes.
One last question to both of you. What kind of a government push would you like to, talk about, if at all?
See, I'd mentioned that in 2031, we're expecting about an attack every 2 seconds. I think it's about time that, at least from a national perspective, companies which have a lot of sensitive data should be, in a way, obligated to buy cyber insurance. See, today, if you set up a company, you're supposed to have a directors and officers liability policy. I don't see why cyber should not be part of it, because this is our nation's data, this is our company's data. These are organizations that will kind of evolve. I think also a lot more has to go into the training of people, like Nigel mentioned, purely because 74% of all the breaches that happened in 2022, which is that only data I remember, is because of employees or people inside the system rather than outside. So I think we've got to become more aware. I think we've got to do a lot more training from the government side, and maybe hopefully become a little part of it has to become obligatory.
What about
No, in fact, I will tell you like what I see, government is taking a lot of initiative. In fact, the introduction of privacy law will change things significantly. Because one thing I can tell you, like I believe in India, we still don't want to accept this as an exposure. And when I look at the global exposure, when I look at various exposure, the traditional exposures like your natural calamity, your war or terrorism risk, and when you speak to the risk manager, they very clearly identify cyber is much bigger threat than all these.
Yes.
So government is taking the right steps in right directions. In fact, the TPDP board, there will be a lot of responsibility in terms of educating the people and the provisions which they have been made. I think it will be a step in the positive direction, and I think we are like progressing.
All right, so let's all of us hope for that. And this also brings me to the end of this discussion. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's a wrap from my end too. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.